Podcast Answer Man, episode number 195.
Entertaining, educational, and encouraging content that makes a difference.
This is GSPN.TV.
Join the community.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Podcast Answer Man. My name is Cliff Ravenscraft, and this is the podcast about podcasting, helping you take your show to the next level. That's our goal, and answering your questions on our voicemail feedback hotline is what I love to do most. Of course, we've got 5 calls, I think, that have come in this week, and I'm going to give you an update on what's been going on with Plus membership. That's right, my friends. We have plenty of questions today, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you what we're going to cover. We're going to talk about how long should it take to produce a single episode of a podcast. We're going to talk about Twitter, and or at least we're going to get a question about Twitter and how you can use that in your business. We're going to get a call here from Butch Gibson. He's trying to learn more faster, and we're going to give him some opportunity to do so and tell him how he can do that. Ian Westerman called in, and well, I'll tell you what, that one's a special surprise. All right, and then we got Scott Gorman wants to know whether or not he can go straight from his microphone into his processing gear and then into the mixer, or does he need to go ahead and get those insert cables? And then, of course, you'll remember that a couple of weeks ago, I told you that I was contemplating a huge decision about Plus membership, and I'm going to give you an update of, of course, I've already told you what the decision was, I think 2 episodes ago. I'm going to share with you what the results are after making that decision just after the first month. And so I've got some interesting stats here that I want to read off to you. And so that's what's going to be included in today's show. If that sounds interesting, stick around. If not, tune in again next week. Maybe I'll have something for you. All right, so here's the deal. We're going to start off the day right with our good friend Jonathan Nation, who recently started his own podcast called Starting Cube. And here's Jonathan's question.
I'm Jonathan Nation with StartingCube.com. Cliff, you've had a long experience doing podcasts, thousands of episodes. Just take the Weekly Lost podcast, which you did for 7 seasons. My question is, how much time did each episode, on average, really take? And I want you to talk about 2 different time periods. Early on, when you were just starting, first few episodes of the Weekly Lost podcast, or Journally, or My Crazy Life, or the other shows you did at the beginning, and then compare it also to what you do today. So how long, including show prep, editing, post-production, uploading, and I know because you have a virtual assistant and staff and stuff like that today, include their time in it, because for individuals, they're going to have to do it all. So how much time does it take to come up with the ideas for the show, generate the plan for the show, record the show, post-production of the show, and post the show online? Thanks, Cliff.
All right, Jonathan, thank you very much for calling in that question. And it's one that hasn't been asked in a very long time, so I'm glad that you brought it up again. And yeah, it's definitely something that I'm going to give a lot of encouragement here to those of you who are brand new podcasters. And when I say encouragement, because to be honest with you, a majority of podcasters out there make it to about their 7th episode before they finally give up. And I say a majority, I mean, like, I'm talking out of my experience over the last 5 years, and I have a lot of experience with brand new podcasters. I would say that about 6 or 7 out of every 10 brand new podcasters give up either on or before their 7th podcast episode. In fact, I would say almost all podcasters who make it past their 10th episode usually continue on with a very successful show. And the difference between the people who stop at 7 episodes or below and the people who make it to 10 episodes and beyond, there is no difference into the types of frustrations that they face in their podcasting journey when it comes to audio editing woes and unequal audio levels, the frustration of losing an episode here or there, and all of the other things. Really, those two groups of people experience the same trials and tribulations. It's just that the ones who actually continue to make it beyond 10 episodes and beyond, those folks are the ones who don't let the initial roadblocks and stumbling blocks get in the way. They press on through, and I will tell you, I don't know anybody out there today who on their 40th episode who is not producing their show in almost half the time as what they did their first 5 or 6 or 7 episodes. But your question to me is whether or not, how much time do I spend on shows? I want to tell you the Lost podcast that you mentioned. By the way, it was 6 seasons that the TV show was on, and I podcasted for 5 of those 6 seasons. But the question is, how much time did I spend on those earlier episodes? Let's just take, I would say probably around episode number 4 or 5, when I really decided to get serious about the podcast. Because the first 2 or 3 episodes, to be honest with you, wasn't a whole lot of prep time put into it, because it was just me really playing around, just tinkering with the technology. And when I found out that there was really an audience that was genuinely interested in what we had to share, I took it a lot more seriously. And so I'm gonna share with you, like, right around episode 4 through 15, and give you an idea of how much time those episodes took. When it came to show preparation, and I am not exaggerating when I tell you this, when it came to show preparation for the weekly Lost podcast, I spent no less, and again, this is no exaggeration, no less than 8 hours on show preparation. And that is nothing to do with setting up the equipment. That's nothing to do with that's just putting together a document that will outline all the information that I wanted to share. Now, the Lost TV show was such that, there was so much hidden clues and Easter eggs and all kinds of mysterious kinds of things that were elements that were brought into the show, that it caused an entire worldwide group of people that numbered in the millions to hit the internet and start discussing with one another on the forum all kinds of theories and posting screen captures to support different elements, and all kinds of wonderful things were happening. And what I would do is I would spend hours combing through and looking at what was being said online, and I would actually share, I would actually copy and paste a lot of those conversations over into my show notes. I would pull screen captures that people were sharing so that I could post those in the show notes. I mean, I was literally spending hour after hour after hour preparing for this podcast episode. And so now this is a major extreme, and I'll give you some other of my other shows that are more commonplace. But the Lost podcast, I would spend at least 8 hours of show preparation per episode back in the early days. Then what would happen would be, we're talking, so if we can add this up here, I'm going to write down my little notes here. So we got 8. So then after we have the 8 hours of show preparation, now it's time to actually record the show. And back then, we didn't record all of our shows live. We did a couple live shows, and boy, live shows just added a lot of extra time to set up back in those days. But what it did take me a long time, even though we weren't doing live shows, was the fact that I didn't have a podcast studio. There was no studio. There was just a bunch of equipment, a bunch of cables, a bunch of wires. And by the time that I finally got myself a mixer and some, XLR, microphones and I was recording back into computer software back then. I was using one computer to record. I was using another computer to play audio clips like, this right here.
Hey, cool, you fixed.
And then
it's an interesting theory.
Or
yes.
Colonel Locke, is this line secure?
Line secure, go ahead.
Hey, Cliff, Stephanie, Toy.
So we would play all those audio clips off of one computer, and that computer had to be adjusted to make sure that the audio levels of the sound coming from that computer, coming into the mixer, going into the recording computer was equal to my voice. And I actually had to set up the gear in these computers in the living room or in the recording space. We had a folding table. I had to set that up every single week, and then when I was done, I would tear it all down because it was in the middle of our family room. And we had very, very, very young kids at the time that if I didn't tear it all down, things would get played with. So, excuse me. So basically what happened was I would probably spend another, let's say, 2 hours on setting everything up and getting the audio levels just right, doing a lot of sample recordings, playing it back, making sure it sounded okay. And even back then, my audio wasn't all that great. But, to get it as good as it was, it did. It took about 2 hours. And of course, that 2 hours includes, me getting all the audio levels adjusted and set up just the way I want them and playing, doing a bunch of sample recordings and seeing everything was right. And then all of a sudden, I wouldn't actually have Stephanie or any other co-host come into the studio until it's time to record. And by the time they come in to record, it's time to record. And then the next thing I know, they come in and Stephanie's talking really silent and soft like this. And our other co-host at the time, Rachel, she was just as loud as I was, but she was different volume level than me. And so I then even had to further adjust it. So all that 2 hours of setting up and everything includes everything into that. Now, when it came to the production of those early days of the Lost Podcast, we would actually record for 2 hours, sometimes as much as 3 or 4 hours. But let's just say on average, we would record for 2 hours. And by the way, my show notes at the time, I used to print them out and give us all a copy. And my show notes were about 8 to 10 pages thick. And I used very small print. I think I used like 10 point print on the Google Docs back then. Or I don't know if we used Google Docs. I probably used Microsoft Word or something. Anyway, so we now have 8 hours for show prep, 2 hours for setting up the equipment, 2 hours for recording. And then, of course, I wanted to try to keep my podcast episodes about an hour or so or less. And at times I would I would actually be editing them down and it's like, they would go out as an hour and 20 minutes. But I would spend approximately 3 hours on average to do post-production. And then, of course, that post-production would include getting it on the web and posting the show notes and making sure all the image screen captures and stuff like that went on. So let's see here. We're looking at a total of about 15 hours per episode of the Weekly Lost Podcast years ago. Now, let's go to, let's say, another podcast that I produced back then, which was like the My Crazy Life. That kind of came up. Today that show is called Pursuing a Balanced Life. That show did not take very much show prep at all because, honestly, it was just one of those things where I just shared what was off the top of my head. And so there was little to no show prep at all. When it came to recording those episodes, I didn't have to set up a lot of gear. I just took a little portable recorder and went out walking or sat down in my, by that time I had a studio set up that was off in a corner and I could just speak into the microphone. So the computers were all already set. The audio levels were already set. Nobody was allowed to touch anything in that corner. And so there really wasn't an equipment set up. And so let's just say the show was 1 hour in length. So you got 1 hour of production time. And then what happened was my editing on that show, I finally got to the point where I decided, you know what? I am not going to edit my shows anymore. I'm going to go live to hard drive. I'm going to just, whatever was recorded, that's what you get. There's a rare occasion over the last 2,400 and some odd episodes that I've done. I would say probably about 80 or 90 of those shows have been edited where we cut out bits and pieces here and there. But for the most part, what I record is what gets sent out. And if I record for an hour and 10 minutes, it's an hour and 10 minutes. If I record for 17 minutes, it's 17 minutes. So, yeah. And so basically, let's just say this show was an hour in length. It was an hour. And then post-production back then, because I was still recording into a computer And because I was still processing on very old computers and stuff like that, and then posting it to the web and all these other different things, and the way that I was actually posting it to the web, let's just say I spent about an hour in post-production. So that's about 2 hours. Now, here I am, almost 2,500 episodes into this thing. And I want to give you an example of this podcast today. How long does this show take me to prepare for? Well, the first and foremost, I want to say thank you to everybody who calls in at 859-795-4067 on our voicemail feedback hotline and calls in your questions. Or like Jonathan did, he recorded his on his own audio recorder or software and then emailed it as an attachment to feedback@gspn.tv. But the show prep here is pretty easy. Now, I still spend, for this episode of Podcast Answer Man, I probably spent about 1 hour of show prep. And by 1 hour of show prep, that means I actually go into the feedback inbox of gspn.tv. I download all the MP3 files that come in, and the ones that are for Podcast Answer Man, I label them so. I listen to the questions. Some of them, kind of like Butch Gibson today, called in a question. And Butch, I hate to say it, but I edited your feedback down just a bit. And I know Butch will understand why. But anyway, I edited it down quite a bit. And so there's a little bit of editing time on some of the audio feedback. Sometimes the audio levels just aren't right, and I have to amplify some of those audio levels or level them out. And so I do a little, editing and production and processing on some of the feedback that comes in. And then I label them and I put them in my show notes. I use Google Docs and I type in, what the name of the person is that's calling in, what they're calling in about, and a little general overview of what I'm going to say in advance. If I have something I'm going to say in advance. Like for now, you guys probably wish I was actually going off of some notes here right now on this one because I've been talking about this one so long. But this one here, I'm just talking off the top of my head, and I find out that when I'm not going off of some prepared notes ahead of time, an outline of what I want to say, I actually ramble on quite a bit. So I should probably spend a little bit more time, and at times I do. But today, I'm not. And so I probably spent about an hour in pre-show preparation deciding what I was going to bring into this episode. I'm going to tell you about pre-show preparation for some of my other shows. Let's take Social Media Serenity, for example. Now, I subscribe to just a handful, a very short list of RSS feeds. And I read stories that come through, and if it has to do with technology, I'll put them over there in Business Tech Weekly, or I'll email them to myself for notes for Business Tech Weekly. If they have to do with social networking stuff, I'll put them aside for Social Media Serenity, another podcast that I do. Anyway, what I do on those, and what I've decided to do from this point forward, is that I'll read a story. If I think I'm going to include it and talk about it in an episode of Social Media Serenity, I'll go to the new gspncommunity.com website, and I will post a topic there saying, hey, check this out. I read this story. Here's a link to the original story that I read. Here's a summary of what it is. Now talk amongst yourselves. And then what I can do is I can use their commentary that they've done in the community forum and bring that kind of stuff into the show as well. And then, of course, I actually go into my show notes and I just add to the list of topics that we're going to talk about what that topic is. And then I put a link in the show notes to that section in the forum. And that way, people who see our show notes, they can actually click on that and it'll take them to where they can discuss those topics with people in our GSPN community forum. I would say that probably, and by the way, I also have co-hosts for a couple of my shows, like Business Tech Weekly, I have Andy Traub, Social Media Serenity, I have Eric Fisher, and with Help I Got a Mac, I got Chris Biding, Balanced Living Weekly, I've got Father Roderick, and so I still personally spend about an hour in each of those shows in preparation, and my co-hosts also spend some time as well. But so we're talking about an hour of show prep. Now, we record between 30 minutes to an hour, but let's just say for an hour. And I don't do any editing on any of these shows. And so post-production takes me about 15 minutes total. And let me explain to you what post-production is. I hit stop on my audio recorder. I drag and drop the file to my computer. Let's just assume that I'm doing it myself and my assistant's not doing it for me. So basically, I drag and drop the file to my computer. I run it through Adobe Audition, or open it up in Adobe Audition. I run one process called the multiband compressor with my secret sauce settings on there. And then I hit save to resave the file. I tag the file, giving it, the metadata information with the artwork and some descriptive text. And then I upload it to Libsyn. And then while that's uploading to Libsyn, I go over to the site. I copy and paste the show notes into a new post in WordPress. I choose the category, give it a title. And as soon as Libsyn is done uploading it, I type in the URL of the MP3 file into the PowerPress plugin that I'm using, hit verify, hit publish, and I'm done. That takes about 15 minutes for all of that. So we're talking a total of what used to take me somewhere between, anywhere as much as 3, 4, or 5 hours up to as much as 8 hours. Now all of my shows take about 2 hours and 15 minutes total per episode. Hopefully that gives you an idea, a feeling. If your show was in general terms, here's my feeling. If you have a 10-minute podcast, then I think you should probably be spending about an hour to an hour and 30 minutes on that. If you have a 30-minute podcast, you should probably be spending about 2 hours or 2.5 hours on that podcast. If you have an hour-long podcast, you should probably be spending a total of about 2.5, maybe 3, or as much as 3.5 hours on that podcast. So hopefully that gives you some understanding there. But yeah, there's definitely you can go way overboard on show prep and setup and all that other stuff. But I would say the shortest time that I've ever spent on the production of a show is I can actually produce a show in under an hour. So if I wanted to, if I didn't have to do any show prep and I was just going to do an episode, let's just say I was really inspired to just record an episode of a topic that was just came up off the top of my head. And I don't do any show prep for it. It's like I'm inspired. I come down to the studio, I hit record on the recorder, and let's just say that's a 30-minute long episode, and then I'm done. I will tell you that entire episode should not take me more than 45 minutes from beginning to end. That's recording the 30 minutes and then 15 minutes to process it to the website. So a 30-minute show without any show prep could take me as little as 45 minutes. But it's because I have some workflow and I've been doing this for a very long time that I have some great processes in place and a wonderful workflow. And if you want to find out what that workflow is and exactly how I'm doing it, then I would recommend going over to podcastanswerman.com/studio setup. And again, that's podcastanswerman.com/studio setup. And what that's going to do is it'll take you to a digital product that I created, and it'll show you all the equipment that I use, exactly how I have all of that equipment hooked up. And not only that, but it will share with you my step-by-step, and I do mean step-by-step, personal workflow of going from the beginning, including all the software that I use to do everything from show prep to all the way to producing every little aspect of the podcast, my complete workflow. And I think that's only $75. So again, that's over there at podcastanswerman.com/studio setup. Hey, let's move on to our next call. And luckily, folks, I have some prepared responses to Richard and his question about Twitter. Richard?
This is Richard Childs calling you from California, and I'm enjoying your GSPN podcast that I'm listening to via iTunes. And I just wanted to give you a call because I am a Twitter user, and I still don't completely get Twitter. And I thought it might be great to have a sort of in-depth for dummies look at Twitter on your show and a discussion about some of the subtler aspects of Twitter. I know, for example, Guy Kawasaki was once asked, would he give up his cell phone for a week, or would he give up his Twitter account? And he said, without doubt, he would give up his cell phone first, because he could not maintain his business without Twitter. I know you've talked about Twitter in the past, and as I say, I am a user, and I do post to it regularly, but I would like to sort of get a greater understanding of how people use Twitter for business. So thank you again for the show, and if you need to look me up, you can visit me at Rinc.com, and that's RINC, and I'll look forward to checking out your further podcasts. Goodbye for now.
All right, Richard, thank you very much for calling in your question about Twitter and how it can be useful for your business. Before I answer, I did want to ask, I wonder if Guy Kawasaki was asked, if you had to make a choice between getting rid of all telephone communication, including, a landline, a phone line to your office, or Twitter, which would you prefer? Because I'm wondering, because cell phones, I don't need a cell phone. I do personally. I wouldn't want to be without my cell phone. But to be honest with you, I'd say Twitter's pretty darn important. But I think that if it weren't for Twitter, I could use other tools. I could use Facebook. There are other places that I could organize my brand around. But I do know exactly what Guy Kawasaki is talking about, and he's built businesses around Twitter. So I think he's behind the Alltop service and some other things. So I think he's got just a little bit of a distorted view for the overall person, and that he actually has businesses that are built upon that services. And my business here is not built upon Twitter, but I certainly use Twitter as a platform for communicating and connecting with my audience. So it's very important to me. Now, the thing is I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this question here on Podcast Answer Man, because I have an entire podcast with a ton of episodes. Almost we're quickly approaching 100 episodes of Social Media Serenity. I think today we're recording episode number 76. So I want to encourage you to check out socialmediaserenity.com. Again, socialmediaserenity.com. Episode 71 I did with a friend of mine actually, I'm going to tell you about two episodes that I did with a friend of mine. His name is Justin Lucasavage. Now, my normal co-host for this show is Eric Fisher, but I had two episodes where I had my friend Justin, and he actually specializes in helping businesses use social media to build their brands and market their services. And so I'm going to tell you to check out episode 71, which is titled, Will Social Media Help My Business? And episode 57, which is The Power of LinkedIn. Now, I know you specifically asked about Twitter. My suggestion is go to socialmediaserenity.com and subscribe to that podcast and listen to everything you can, because it will help answer all of those questions that you have, Richard. And of course, I'll put links to those particular episodes I did mention in the show notes over at podcastanswerman.com. Look for episode number 195 show notes. All right, the next one here is a question from Butch Gibson. Butch, take it away.
My name is Butch Gibson. I'm calling from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'm calling about the show Podcast Answer Man. I just got introduced to podcasts within the past 3 or 4 months since around Thanksgiving 2010. I kind of rediscovered my iPod on some type of photography quest. It all started when I was trying to take some pictures. They turned out blurry, and I wanted to find out more, and I started searching for podcasts. And while searching for podcasts, I found quite a few interesting ones, not necessarily twit, like you've mentioned, but TWIP, This Week in Photography. I just listened to that show, and I really enjoy it. And I've heard quite a few shows, and that just kind of made me start thinking about, hey, maybe I could do my own podcast. Let me search for information about podcasts. Let me find podcasts about how to podcast. And that's how I stumbled upon your show. Long-winded kind of explanation. But the point of that is I've just been enjoying this additional opportunity to get some knowledge in the type of job that I have, that throughout the day I'm usually driving between various locations, or I'm working on stuff where I don't have to use my ears, where I'm working with my hands, and I can listen to a podcast. So +1 on the audio versus video podcast. I'm not always able to pay attention, but the whole point of this is just that I'm enjoying it, and I've just been excited, and I've been trying to gather the information a little more quickly than it's been coming at me. So I'm slowly listening to all the podcasts that you have out there, starting with, I think, 190-something, and working my way backwards. And it's been a good time and a good journey. Keep up the good work. See you.
All right, there we go. Butch, thank you so much for calling in, and I hope you don't mind that I edited that down quite a bit. But a couple things that you pointed out. Number one, +1 for audio. Absolutely. You are in the vast majority of the people that I've ever talked to about podcasting that enjoy listening to these things while they're riding in their car or driving in the car or walking, jogging, at the gym, working out, doing gardening, whatever, cleaning the house, all these other things that you can do. Data entry, all these other things. So yeah, absolutely. And then as far as the other thing I want to point out is that congratulations for working yourself backwards through the archives. So if you're out there listening to this and this is your first episode of Podcast Answer Man, you're like, man, I want to listen to all of these. Well, don't start with the earliest ones and move forward. Start with the latest ones, just like Butch here, and move your way backwards, because there are things that I shared back in those early days of when I started this thing. Things have changed, and so the only way you can protect yourself from making some choices of things that are no longer applicable is to listen on your way backwards through the archives. And it's like if you all of a sudden you come to episode number 62 and it's like, wait a second, what Cliff's saying here, he's contradicted this in a later episode when he said he switched over to this, so I'm not going to follow this advice. So Butch, good for you for doing that. And you said that you're trying to learn fast, you're trying to learn more faster is what you had said. Well, this is a perfect time for me to just mention that I am going to be doing a training course through the entire month of March, and it's going to be my podcasting A through Z. Everything you could ever need to know about audio podcasting, I am going to be sharing it. This is the same thing people have paid me like 5 2-hour sessions for the let's see, and then that's what is that? Is that $1,500? Yeah, 5 2-hour sessions is $1,500. So basically, in the entire month of March, for $800, I am going to be sharing with you all sorts of information. In fact, let me see if I can get the list here of all the different things I'll be sharing with you. Okay, so I have the list pulled up, and I'm working on the marketing materials for this week and actually this weekend. Anyway, so here's basically what's going to be covered over the course of 5 weeks, and I'm going to be devoting a majority of all of my time into the group of people. There's going to be about 20 people. I'm hoping at least 20 people. There are 4 people signed up already, and I haven't really mentioned anything other than just briefly saying something at the end of Podcast Answer Man. And a majority of Podcast Answer Man podcast our audience is people who are already into podcasting. So here's how it's going to work out. We're going to talk about the basics of podcasting. I'm going to explain how podcasting works. So I'm going to just share like a technical overview of how an audio recording gets onto somebody's iPod. And we'll talk about the different steps. So just the basics. I'm going to cover that right away. We're going to talk about how to decide what topic you should podcast about, how to identify who your target audience is. I'm going to give you methods for finding your target audience. I'm going to give you thoughts on naming your podcast that'll help you gain more, choosing the right name and how it can help you gain a larger audience faster. Choosing the right domain for your website. Also, the importance of your website and how to think about your website when it comes to the strategy of interacting and building a community around your podcast. I'm going to give you complete training on setting up WordPress for podcasting. And in fact, included in this $800 course is my WordPress for Podcasters training. That's a $100 value right there. And of course, that's going to help you to set up your hosting account. It's going to show you how to install WordPress, configure it for podcasting, adding an audio player to your site, how to submit your show to iTunes, BlackBerry, and Zune, how to put subscription links on your site. I mean, everything you need when it comes to setting up your WordPress website, even if you've never even touched WordPress before and have no idea even what WordPress is. How to set up a podcast if you're using a free blogging service. That's something for those who don't really want to have a hosting account and they're trying to just play around with this for a while. I'm going to show how to do that with a Blogger account or maybe even a WordPress.com. Haven't decided. Maybe I'll show both. Guidance on the format of your podcast. We're going to talk about things to consider when you consider the length of your podcast, the frequency, how often you release your episodes, whether or not you should do thoughts on, how to decide whether or not you want to do a solo podcast or have a co-hosted discussion show or an interview podcast. Whether or not you might want to bring in the live element or do it pre-recorded. The benefits of doing both. Taking your show on a portable, making your show portable, going and doing live shows out in the field. Choosing the right equipment for your podcast, and how you can actually start with as little as $35, or you can actually have audio that sounds as good as the shows that I do and some of the other shows out there that sound just as good as anything you hear on FM radio stations. We'll give you complete equipment training on how to use a mixer and microphone placement and techniques for not having popped P's and also we're going to teach you how to record your audio. The different solutions for recording your audio. We're going to teach you everything you need to know about editing your podcast, which, by the way, we're for the equipment and stuff like that, there's going to be additional teaching from me, but you also will get the Inside the Studio tutorial, which is $75. That's going to be included, so that product that I told you earlier, the whole podcasting workflow and equipment setup, that's all going to be included. So that's $75, but you're going to get additional training on, everything you need to know about how a mixer works and some other things. And then there's going to be audio editing training. The people who sign up will have access to all 3 of my audio editing tutorials. So you'll get access to Audacity 101, Adobe Audition 101. You also have access to GarageBand 101. So that's a total of $300 there. I'm losing track right now. I don't have the marketing materials. I just have the list of what all I'm including. But anyway, so you're going to get all access to all 3 of those. You're going to get training on how to manage your MP3 files, as far as, where do you host these things and how does Libsyn work, and you're going to get a complete step-by-step tutorial on that service. And I probably will even try to figure out how to give you a couple solutions for free MP3 podcast media hosting. So we'll include that as well in this training over the course of March. Let's see here, complete podcast production workflow. Let's see, we'll do also training on how to promote your show. We'll give you ideas how to get the word out. Training on how to engage in relationships with your audience, so you can learn how, what is it that I've done, what steps have I taken to create an online site and have, almost 200 people sign up within the first 2 weeks of that site. What all steps have I taken over the course of the last couple of years to make that kind of stuff happen, and to have the voicemail feedback hotline flowing with calls. We're going to talk about building relationships with your audience, tips on how to build a community around your podcast, so that people, it's not just about you, but it's about plugging people in who share the passions about the topic for which you podcast about. Training methods for generating income from your podcasting, if that's something that you decide to do. And not to mention the fact that there's going to be plenty of opportunity there. Each week there's going to be a minimum of 1 conference call with me to help answer any questions regarding anything that comes up that week. So, I'm telling you, this is going to be huge. It's only $800. And again, to have the same information, actually, there's more information that's going to be included during the 5 weeks of March that I do this group training course than you would ever get in 5 2-hour sessions with me. And in the month of March, I have reduced drastically my consulting hours that'll be available. I will continue to produce and prepare for GSPN.TV programming. I have a commitment to interact with my community on a daily basis, a minimum of 1 hour every day at gspncommunity.com. But I will tell you, every single business hour spent outside of those things will be spent on teaching, training, and interacting with the people who are participating in my podcasting from A through Z online group training course. And again, this is during the entire month of March. And if you are interested, it's only $800. And you can email me, cliff@podcastanswerman.com, if you want to get signed up. Here's the other thing. If you sign up, even if you don't sign up, if maybe you're one of my clients who has already purchased a ton of those products out there, and you already know the type of training and advice and coaching that I give, and you trust in it immensely enough that you would want to tell your audience about this opportunity to get this group training from me. Here's the deal. What I would ask you to do is please go ahead and promote this to your audience, to your network, to your community. And if anybody's interested, have them contact you via email. And then all I ask that you do is that you actually introduce me to that person via email. And just say, hey, Cliff, here I've CC'd so-and-so. They're interested in your March group training course. And I will take it from there. And here's the situation. If that person that you refer to me via email, if that person signs up for the course and they pay their $800 for the course, I will pay you $150 commission for each person you refer. And again, the process here of getting the commission is that you will be introducing me to that person via email, and I'll take it from there. If they've expressed interest in you, I'll do all the job of sealing the deal and communicating and answering their questions about how things will work. And if they sign up and they pay for it, for each person that does, you'll get $150. And I plan on paying out those commissions during the first week of April. So there you go. I would love to have as many as people as possible. My goal is to have a minimum of 20 people for me to make this worthwhile for me. The reason why is, I'm blocking out pretty much everything just to focus on these folks in March, and there's going to be a lot of preparation during the month of February, and not to mention the fact that I'm going to be away for 11 days on a cruise with Dan Miller speaking there, and So yeah, this is what I've decided to do to cover expenses here at GSPN and Podcast Answer Man, and I'm very excited about it. Again, I've already got 4 people signed up and paid. It's going to be a blast. So there you go. That is an opportunity to learn things faster. We're now going to move on to Ian Westerman. Ian, take it away, my friend.
Hey Cliff, this is Ian, host of the Essential Tennis Podcast, #1 tennis podcast on iTunes, and I want to give you some highs and lows. Something my wife and I used to do is we would give each other our highs and lows for the day or for the week, the high points and the low point. And I've got some podcasting highs and lows for you that I think are both good information for your listeners. First of all, something that we had a back and forth about previously was recording directly into software, something that you're not a fan of. And I have continued to do, even against your recommendations. I know that you very much prefer recording into audio recorder, and I've had no problem recording 150 episodes of my podcast, plus countless other interviews until today. And I just had to record twice my podcast episode for this week, and GarageBand is just completely dumping my audio files right now. And I've been doing some Google searches. Apparently, this is a big, really common problem. And I guess I've just been lucky up until this point. And I know you would love for me to tell you you're right. And that's what I'm doing. You were right, Cliff. So apparently, after recording an episode or a clip, every time I save a project, GarageBand is just completely erasing from my computer the audio when I save. How ridiculous is that? When I save is when I lose the files. And so I'm really frustrated by this and really kind of upset. And I'm going to have to figure out what to do now moving forwards. Starting to record directly into recorder means I'm going to have to totally change my workflow, but I guess if I want the stability, I might have to do that. So I guess I should have listened to you, Cliff, but I had done so many episodes already with no problems. Anyway, I just wanted to tell you I'm now starting to experience problems, so I'm sure your listeners might like to hear that, and I'm sure you might like to hear that as well. Now, high is, I know you're a fan of Heil. I am as well. I use the PR40, which I purchased from you. I also purchased a PL2T topless boom, overhead boom, I believe they call it. And I got it in the mail, and it wouldn't stay up, that the mic would sink immediately after trying to raise it to a comfortable level. I emailed Heil. I actually called them, talked to a real person. He told me to email him a video of it happening, which I did. And an hour later, Bob Heil personally emailed me and said, Ian, I'm sorry you're having problems. We'll send you a new one. I got a new one in the mail. It works perfectly, all at no cost to me. And I just, customer service like that, I love. And the new boom is working great. And of course, the PR40, as always, is working great. So I'm just really impressed by the service I got by Heil. And I'm really happy that I went with your suggestion on Heil. Now maybe I should get smart and go with your suggestion on how to record my podcast as well. All right, I'll wrap it up. Sorry, maybe this was a little bit long, but thank you so much for your show, Cliff. Good luck with your new community, and I hope things continue to go well for you. Take care.
Ian, thank you so much. And I'm not going to say I told you so. But yes, absolutely. You know, folks, listen to this. And of course, those of you who have been listening for the last, I don't know, maybe the last 8, 10, 15 episodes, you may recall when Ian called in and he left a similar length podcast recording or feedback for the podcast recording, where he had gone on and on about the fact that, yes, Cliff, I completely understand where you're coming from. And, I want to let you know, I've got well over 100 episodes. Never have I experienced a single problem, and it just works for me. I'm not arguing with you, but just want to let you know there are some of us out there who don't have who have never experienced a single problem. And so here we have this episode, and, I told Ian back then that you haven't had a bad experience yet. And that there is I did say boldly, I said, there is a 100% chance that you will eventually lose an episode or 2 or 3 or 4 if you continue to record into your computer. And so now he's called back and he says, I'm frustrated and I'm very upset. And, I'm sorry, Ian, that you're facing that. But my recommendation would be that you go over to podcastanswerman.com/studio setup, and I think it's $75 for that product. It will show you exactly my layout of exactly everything that I do, my complete workflow. And if you follow that, I can tell you right now, the potential of losing your podcast episodes is the potential for me so far. I've lost one podcast episode in more than 1,500 episodes there. So, and of course, the only reason I did that is because I had more than 1,500 recordings on an SD card, recording, deleting. I wore out the SD card. So my recommendation is that, you get an Adderall recorder or some other digital audio recorder, but I personally, I recommend the Adderall, really, honestly, I do. And record through that process, and you will find that it's very reliable. And Bob Heil does rock. He is, I love the Heil microphone. I love the Heil equipment that's the accessories for it. And Bob Heil and his company, they are a true American company that believes in customer service and support, and they are there for you if you need them. So thank you for sharing that as well. By the way, in the chat room earlier, while we were talking about the people who do a podcast and then kind of give up, he asked, "Are we the exception in terms of Cliff's clients?" He says he's got to believe that Cliff's clients and Podcast Answer Man listeners have a better success rate than what the average person does. And I will tell you that my success rate with my clients are better, but believe it or not, it's not. I mean, if you can, it depends on who you're talking about. If for the clients who have hired me for like the 4 or 5 2-hour class, the 4 or 5 2-hour sessions with me, if we were to look at only those clients, I will tell you that about 9 out of every 10 of those clients are still podcasting today. And yes, they did make it past their 10th episode. They made it past their 50th episode. And of course, or the ones that have done so, within the last 2 or 3 months are well on their way. Now, when it comes to my overall clients, and I'm talking about the people who say, you know what, I just got into podcasting, but I'm running into problems. I can't get my RSS feed to do this properly, and my audio just sounds horrible. I read this book, and I've been trying to do it, and it's not working out. Well, I've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients that I've helped who have hired me for just 1 hour or just 2 hours. And those people who needed help getting launched, I've successfully helped them. 100% of everybody who's ever hired me, I've successfully got them all launched and working in the right direction, everything functioning properly. And I will tell you, the statistics on just those people are exactly the same. That a majority of them never make it past episode number 7. When people hire me one-on-one on an ongoing basis, what they get from me is a realistic expectation of what's to come. So I think that the reason why people, when they hire me one-on-one and they get my coaching, and not just my consulting, but they get my coaching, I think they have a better understanding of what's ahead of them, and they're prepared for the obstacles that are going to come their way. And there's no doubt, if you're just now starting the podcast, there are going to be obstacles, and there are certain ones I can tell you that are going to come. And a lot of people, again, those clients who just hire me and say, I just need a little bit of help to get to this part. And they don't really care about, the coaching. They just want the consulting to get that done. Those people aren't prepared for some of the negative critical feedback that's going to come. They're not prepared for, the 3 hours of audio editing through Audacity, and they're not prepared for, their artwork not showing up for 2 weeks in iTunes. They're not prepared for a lot of things, and so they just figure it's too much work and they give up. And so yeah. Anyway, my guess is that the people who join my 5-week course in March, if I had to guess, I'm going to say that probably 8 or 9 out of every 10 people will probably produce at least 50 podcast episodes. And I feel pretty confident in that. And yeah, that means that, is there going to be about 2 or as many as 4 people who will pay me $800 and they'll record 7 episodes or less? Yeah. There's going to be some people who do that too. And I hate that, and I'm going to do everything in my possible to not do that. But I just know, statistically speaking, that's just how things work out. But my goal and my desire will be to help every single person to the best of my ability all through the month of March. And so if you guys are into that, let me know. Hey, Scott Gorman called in, and very short feedback from him, or question from him, and here's what he has to say.
Hey, Cliff, what process do you think is the best setup? Microphone to processor and then to mixing board, or microphone to mixing board attaching insert cables for a send to the processor and a return back to the mixing board? Thanks a lot.
All right, Scott, thank you for your call, and it depends on what processing equipment you're talking about. If you're talking about like a Behringer MDX 4600 compressor limiter gate, you do not, and I must stress this, you must not go from your microphone straight into the input of the processor and then go from the output of that into the XLR input of your mixer, because you have to have a preamp. Now the thing is with even with my dynamic microphone, is there the possibility that that compressor limiter gate's going to pull the audio from the mic? Yes, but you're going to hear a static in there because you're going to have to be gaining up or amplifying that signal coming from the processor so loud to even be able to hear what's coming in from the mic. You're going to you're going to be coming in at anyway. The thing is you need to amplify the signal coming from your mic. So to answer your question, by the way, some processing equipment, there are a lot of processing equipment, pieces of equipment out there that have preamps out there, or if you have a rack setup, you can actually get a preamp. You can actually get a straight preamp. And so if you were going into, let's just say, your Heil microphone, for example, and you went then straight into your preamp, and then you went out of the preamp into the processing compressor limiter gate, and then you would go in, I would actually go into one of the line in ports on your mixer, because then you've got the right chain going. But if you have one of my equipment setups, then what you would want to do is you would want to go your microphone into your XLR port on your mixer, and then you want to take an insert cable that plugs into the insert port on the back of your machine or back of your mixer, and you want to take the send portion of that cable will go into your processing equipment's input, and then you take the return and plug that into the output. And what happens is, as soon as you plug that insert cable in, it's kind of like what's going on is your voice is going in through your microphone into the cable that goes into your XLR port, and then the mixer sends the audio immediately out that insert cable into your processing equipment. Then it gets processed, and then the return portion of that cable brings it back into your mixer, and then your mixers and stuff like that. So I hope that helps. If your processing equipment has a preamp built in, you're good to go straight to the processing equipment. If it does not, you will want to plug into your mixer and then come out the insert ports. All right, so I hope that helps you. And one last thing I want to let you know here in this episode of Podcast Answer Man is an update on Plus membership. You'll remember I shared that I was giving away all my content available for free. It was something I felt led to do to make the content that we produce at gspn.tv available to the largest number of people possible. Something I really just felt to trust God on the income portion of things. We felt like I felt as though that a majority of the people who were Plus members were really there to support the content and the time and energy and effort and attention that I put into putting these shows out on a weekly basis. By the way, if you're listening to Podcast Answer Man and this is the only show you listen to, check out gspn.tv/shows because I produce somewhere between 8 to 15 podcast episodes every single week here. So we put out a lot of content, and we believe it's all very entertaining. We believe it's extremely educational, very encouraging, and hopefully inspirational. And we believe a lot of people believe in the content that we're putting out here. And I felt as though if we were to give it all away for free, there would still be a core group of people out there that would be willing to contribute to keep this stuff going. So here's the update. This is what's happened, by the way. And I'm going to go ahead and start the music so that I can force myself to quit within the next 3 minutes and 30 seconds. So hit this music right here. Here's the deal. So far, this is what's happened during the month of January 2011 since we announced this. So far, 20 people have canceled their GSPN.TV Plus membership. All right? I expected this completely. It was not a shock to me. 4 people who were paying $10 a month for their monthly Plus membership lowered their amounts down to $5 a month. So 4 people who were paying $10, since we offered a lower amount, they did reduce it. 10 people actually signed up as new contributors. So they actually that's 10 people who signed up as new monthly contribution subscriptions. The overall total monthly impact during the month, during this first month of this new change is that we are now, our monthly income that we can bank on because of subscriptions, we are down $129 per month, okay? Which is exactly in line. I suspected it would be about a 10% decrease, and it has turned out to be pretty much exactly that amount. So we're down $129 per month on monthly support that's coming in from the community. However, we've added a focus on you can make one-time contributions of any amount. And 20 people have made one-time contributions during the month of January, which totaled $388.55. So technically speaking, January 2011 brought in more income from Plus membership than any of the months prior. So there you go. It really confirmed a lot of things for me. Interesting thing, though, 4 people did sign up for Plus membership with a single $1 contribution, and they are a Plus member for life under the new guidelines. It doesn't bother me at all, but I found it interesting that they did actually go through and contribute just $1. Anyway, we added a total of 33 new Plus members in 2011. Of course, like I said, 10 of those people signed up for monthly contributions. That's 23 people who signed up as a brand new Plus member with a one-time contribution of at least $1. So with all the changes to Plus membership, where everyone contributed, at least $1, everything is to the point to where now we have 467 people who are considered Plus members. So yeah, I'm looking here at the rest of my notes. The thing is, the big thing is I suspect that my monthly total will still go down just a little bit in February from subscriptions, but my feeling is that by March we should see more new subscriptions than those that are canceled, and overall I think probably by June, July, things are going to turn out to where this is actually going to be confirmed that this was the right decision. Hey folks, thanks for taking a look at our community here at gspn.tv. If you haven't done so already, go over to gspncommunity.com. Until next time, join the community.